Men, do you ever feel like you just can't get ahead? Like you're misunderstood? Like you have no one to talk to that truly hears you?
And women, are you often frustrated, hurt, and saddened in your relationships with the men in your life?
What if there were a community of like-minded men going through the same challenges that would support, hear, and understand what you're going through?
Working together in unison to create understanding, intimacy, and strong connections. That's the Way of the Illuminated Warrior.
Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show is a forum of candid conversations for men and women about men. Heard every Thursday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. Being a man today is not always easy. Until now.
Welcome to the Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show. Today, our topic is going to be on presence. And yes, you hear the word presence, and presence is the gift. So I'm very happy for the gift that we are going to enjoy today. So my guest today is Aurora Taylor. Say hi, Aurora.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, the work that I do, as you know, and a lot of the people who listen to the show, is it's a transformational men's community. And I believe it's really important to have a lot of different perspectives and to have the feminine perspective as well, instead of just guys just talking about guy stuff and doing the work that guys need to do without that whole full perspective. So I wanted to do a show on presence, and I thought, who could I talk to about presence? So my experience with Aurora is in person, as well as your online sharings, your Ayurvedic consultation and knowledge and wisdom, your tea ceremonies, your yoga, and just everything that I've witnessed that you do. I would see your picture next to the word presence in the Webster's dictionary. So that's why I wanted to have you on the show. So I think you'd be perfect for this conversation. Yeah.
Aw, thank you so much for seeing me and for inviting me.
Absolutely. So thank you for being present. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start off. When did you first start your practice of being present? How did that come about? Was there some kind of event, or, did you just wake up and say, hey, I'm present?
No, it was a gradual unfolding. It still is. It started, I was in kind of a darker space of my life, going through some more challenges and darker spaces. And I got to a point where I just had this idea that I was going to pack everything, sell everything, and go to Nicaragua and study yoga. I had been practicing yoga, started out just in my living room to on-demand video every morning, and that transformed into going to classes. And then when I got into a really dark space, it was like, yoga is the only thing that I kind of feel my light. And so I followed that, and doing a teacher training, I got my certification to teach, but it's so transformational on the personal level and connection with spirit. And I hadn't really quite understood that or knew that I was getting myself into that. I was just following this place in me that was really dark and said, this is the light, follow that.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adam. I don't want to break the flow.
Yeah. So then that, while I was studying yoga, I learned about Ayurveda. And again, it was just like, I got to follow that. There's something there. And shortly after, tea came into my life. And so I think there's been a lot of different avenues and practices that have helped me to live my life with more presence. And yeah, it's definitely a gift that I'm grateful to receive through these different avenues, different practices.
Beautiful. Well, I want to have a couple questions based on what you just said, but I want to back up a little bit. We hear the word presence a lot, and for me, presence is just being, not doing, but being, like in that space of whatever it is that's happening in the moment. So if I'm having a conversation with someone, it's really being totally present to that person, to be actively listening, not in my head thinking about all sorts of other things, and being there for that conversation, for that give and that take. And whether it's a conversation, or I'm meditating, or I'm playing my guitar, or I'm reading, whatever it is, it's like Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk, always says, he's like, if you're doing the dishes, just do the dishes. You know, just being in that space of whatever is happening now, because the future is completely and totally irrelevant, and the past is completely and totally irrelevant. You know, and it is funny, but the reality is, when we stop worrying about the past and we stop perseverating over the future, we're in the moment, in the now, and it just seems to be a very challenging thing for most people to do. So that's my, you know, my little definition of presence. What would you want to add anything to that, or your perception?
Yeah, I like how you mentioned like being present in yourself to be able to be present for someone else. And so in addition to that aspect, I think being present with yourself is kind of also being present with your emotions. You know, if you're sitting there and you're listening and then suddenly you do get sidetracked, you know, being present with the fact that you got sidetracked, or being present when you start to feel maybe a little nervous, or, you know, whatever the feeling is, being present with those emotions and present with that current state of being. So in a way, almost like letting go of the control of how you're being present, and just allowing yourself to be, and being aware of that, and being aware when you're not aware of that. And then also, like, you know, I think for me, presence is a practice. Like, I think it's our natural state of being, but I also think it's a practice. And just the other day, I had this aha moment, because I realized I was eating while thinking about something, while listening to someone. And all of these three things are happening at once. And I had this moment where I realized, like, wow, we're capable of doing a lot of different things at once. And so I think presence is being aware of all that, and then creating the space to practice presence, where we're letting go of that stuff, letting go of the thoughts, the to-dos, the past, the future, and just being. And from what I understand, the more we do that, and the more we practice that, the more that just naturally becomes our state of being.
Yeah, it's muscle memory. It's practicing anything, like whether it's a sport or meditation or presence. It's practicing it over and over and over again, and it is like a muscle memory. Just like with a sport, you know, you have the muscle memory of throwing or catching or archery, whatever it is. It's the same with our spiritual practices. I believe that the more we practice these ways, the more they become ingrained in us. Yeah. So I want to go back. You said something before. I asked you about your journey, how it began, and you talked about like being in a dark place, which is really not uncommon as a catalyst and a motivator. I love music. I listen to and watch a lot of documentaries, and it's amazing how many artists have been motivated to either get out of their towns or get out of their relationships or family situations. That dark place that has really birthed some of the best creative music and expression of being in that dark place. And as we know, there's no darkness without the light. It's the yin and the yang, it's the balance, it's the complementary opposite. So you coming from that dark place is really, I look at it as a blessing, because without that, right, you don't know the light, you don't come to the light, right?
Totally. Yeah, I reflect on my own places of darkness. You know, it's happened multiple times.
Welcome to life.
See that. Yeah, exactly. Like part of being human. But in those spaces, it's almost like those are the major spaces of transformation, because those are the places where you're not really comfortable. And it's almost like, in a way, it's a gentle nudge or a forceful nudge to make some changes. And so, yeah, seeing those dark places as a gift, and now being able to recognize, ooh, something juicy, something big's about to change, and going through it and being present for it. Whereas in the past, especially in that first kind of like really dark space, I was just trying to run away from it. You know, because a lot of times I think we feel alone there, or like we're the only ones, you know, going through something that dark or that intense. But as you said, it's part of being human. So if we can shift our perspective of it and see it as a gift, and know that it means we're willing to walk through it, big change will happen. And then it's like, if you come up to the top of the mountain, it's pretty epic up there at the top, but you're going to come back down. So yeah, having that kind of like trust and faith in it's part of our human experience. It's a cycle. Makes it a little bit easier to be present for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you wanted to run from it, but as I'm sure you know all too well, you could run, but you can't hide. There's no hiding from it. I mean, I often quote this saying, like, emotions buried alive never die. So they may come up next week or they may come up 30 years from now. But if we stuff those emotions down, those feelings of whatever it is, unworthiness, anger, guilt, resentment, blame, shame, all that stuff, stuffing it down, which is a lot of the work that I do with the guys. It's okay. It's actually more than okay to feel these things. It's okay to let them surface. It's okay to cry. It's okay to emote, because that's, the only way to get past it. You hear like there's no breakthrough without breakdown, which I really believe is true. And it's totally, we're in a state of really trauma right now. The whole society is in a state of trauma. The cortisol and the serotonin, it's just running through our bodies in a constant state that we're really not affording ourselves the times to do these practices and to really truly be present. I believe that's true. And a lot of the medical people that I follow, like Dr. Zach Bush, and there's a great independent movie out right now called The Wisdom of Trauma, and it speaks to these things. And it's so important to really start a new paradigm where we're seeing everyone, especially the people who have had the darkest times and the troubles, the people who have been incarcerated, the people who are living on the streets, the people who don't have, to not put them in these darker places where they're not being rehabilitated, they're not being fed, they're not being fed physically, they're not being fed spiritually. That, it's cliche, but it takes a community, it takes a village, and that's really big work that I think we as a society need to do. So I don't want to go down a too dark rabbit hole, but it is like important what's going on out there. And so I want to ask you, like with yoga, and you probably know this saying better than I, it goes something like, it's not so important like how far that you can stretch or bend down. It's the wisdom that comes with, just the bending down, something like that. That actually doesn't sound great, but maybe, do you know the reference I'm referring to?
Yeah, well, I think asana is only part of the yogic practice. And many people think that yoga is just asana. Asana is the physical postures. So a lot of people think that yoga is just about how far you can bend down and touch your toes, and if you can do all these poses, and that's really just a small little piece of what yoga really is. And yoga is a living, breathing practice. It's a pathway to presence, pathway to knowing your true self, pathway to knowing God. And so, a lot of times we can practice a lot of movements in our body, but the real magic happens when we connect the breath, the consciousness, the body, and then that comes in alignment through these asanas or these postures that are, specific energetic alignments of our physical body that connect us to our inner wisdom, outer wisdom, and spirit. So,
yeah, well, you reminded me when you gave that description there. It's what we learn on the way down. That's the most important. It's not how far we bend down. It's about what we learn, what we get, what we become from it.
We'll be right back after this. Do you sometimes feel down, lost, or lonely? Are your finances feeling sluggish? Can your relationships use a healthy tune-up? Don't fear, bro. Help is here. Experience the benefits of connecting with other men who are going through similar challenges. Be supported in our safe, sacred, and inspiring monthly telecircle with the Brotherhood of the Illuminated Warriors. Connect with Waska for one-on-one mentoring with the first session completely free. What have you got to lose? Check out illuminatedwarrior.com or send an email to waska@illuminatedwarrior.com. You're invited to step up your game and join us. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah, so when I'm present, I feel calm, I feel grounded, I feel open. And so when I say I feel grounded and calm, it doesn't mean that I'm also not having emotions come through to be released. Like, I feel open to what is. I also feel safe, and I feel trusting in exactly where I am, exactly what's happening in my life, exactly what I'm feeling. And so in a way, I feel at peace when I'm present. And I feel it feels blissful. and I can feel blissful even when I'm present with some heavier emotions or some aspects that are challenging. So let's say that's a good way to put into words how I feel when I'm present. And then when I'm not present, I tend to feel a little ungrounded, a little scattered, a little hyper, maybe even a bit more in my mind. And when the mind starts going, then doubts come in and fears come in, and and so I think when I'm not present, I lose a little bit of that groundedness and that trust. And in a way, it's like practicing presence helps me to remember my interconnectedness and the fact that I am a spirit having a human experience. And when I'm not present, it's like, I'm a human and I'm not feeling connected, and I'm feeling doubt, and I'm feeling kind of a little bit chaotic. And that's not to say I'm not also feeling blissful, but I guess that's how I could kind of put to words how it feels.
Oh, no, that's beautiful. I mean, being grounded and blissful and open and safe. I mean, who wouldn't want to feel those things, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the opposite of what you're describing is not the non-presence really is either more than likely thinking about things of the past, worrying about things, or projecting into the future, things that may never happen. So that's why the saying is the power of now, being in the moment. And it's just, it's so interesting to me that it sounds so simple. It sounds so simple. I've been meditating for many, many, many moons, but yet, every morning I'll sit on my cushion. Some days it's like, hey, piece of cake, but an hour goes by, I don't even know it. And other days it's like the monkey's in there just pounding on his little cymbal saying, no.
Yep. There's so many different ways that we can get creative about practicing presence. You don't have to sit in lotus posture and close your eyes and do breathing techniques. Like, sure, that's one way and it's great if it works for you, but it could be as simple as, okay, you want to practice gratitude, put a Post-it note on your ceiling above your bed that says, you woke up, I'm alive. If you want to remember things to be grateful for and start practicing that, gratitude is very similar to presence. Like, you got to practice it, and and it may not. It's a feeling that gets cultivated. It's cultivating gratitude, cultivating presence, and so there's so many different ways that we can be creative and find what works for us. And I think that's what's important when we talk about different practices of presence, is that it's not just about sitting and meditating and turning the monkey mind off and trying to be these beings that have no thoughts, only feel bliss, but rather just finding what works for us and enjoying the process too.
Yes. Great point. Enjoying it. That really is a great point, because you have that image of the high and mighty monk sitting on top of the mountain, which is actually easier. It would be a lot easier to just hang out up there on the mountain, have everybody come up to you, bring you food and gifts, and be like, what is the answer? The journey is the real work. But so let's talk about some of the other practices. So some of the awesome practices that Aurora participates in and shares, your tea ceremonies. Talk about the tea ceremonies, because every time that I see you post something, you talk about it, you're in that space, you're just like, you're glowing, you're glowing. Your favorite tea is any tea that you're having at that moment. I love that. So see, there she goes. So talk about your experience with tea and how that brings that presence and that joy into your life.
Yeah, I love tea. I feel light up just talking about it. And one of the reasons why I love tea is because it's a way for me to practice presence. It's a way for me to tap into myself, what's present for me emotionally, where I'm at in my energy, what's going on in my life, and it was really my doorway into meditation. And I think what's so special about it is the plant, the tea plant, and just in itself is a teacher. It's a medicine. And something as simple as sitting down, heating up a kettle of hot water, and sitting for 3-5 rounds of tea has a powerful effect and ability for us to just and be present. And the interesting thing is we've turned tea into a commodity. And if you look back in ancient history, the monks were the ones who were sharing tea as a pathway to presence, as a method of self-cultivation. So when I sit with tea for me is just as much a practice of presence or spiritual practice to connect with myself, nature, God, as yoga, Ayurveda, and anything else. But for me, tea has been the practice of presence that I'm excited to do every day, that I'm not having to force myself to do it because it works for me. And yeah, it's a really special way to sit and be with what is.
So for those who might not really understand what you're saying when you say tea is a teacher, tea is an entity, really, because obviously it's comes from Mother Earth. It's alive. It has presence in itself. But elaborate on that when you say tea is a teacher. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I like how you said tea is an entity. Tea is a living being. It's a plant medicine. And so within the tea leaves is all of the elements. You know, the sun is in there, the dirt is in there, everything's in there. And so there's wisdom within the leaves, wisdom of nature. And essentially we are nature. And so when we drink the tea becomes us and we become tea. And it's really, what's happening is really profound, and it's kind of hard to find the words for it. But tea has an ability to teach us life lessons. It doesn't take a whole lot of integration. Like I think with some other plant medicines, you sit with the plant shows you maybe something about yourself or helps you get clarity or whatnot. And then there's like a period of integration. But with tea, you can receive clarity or a lesson or drop into a space of presence and just be there and have that with you. And there's no need to take days to integrate it. And so for me, tea has been a great teacher because she helps me to slow down and be with what is. And she helps me to unlock some things in this path of like being human. And it's gentle and it's nurturing, and it's something that you can get right in that moment.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Before I really knew about tea ceremonies and before you and I had met, I love tea. Like I've been doing television production forever. So, I would list on my website, like all this awesome camera gear I have and the audio stuff. And at the bottom, it's the voiceover booth, but at the bottom, I would always write and an awesome selection of teas, of herbal teas, because I was so proud of my awesome selection of herbal teas, because it really is like, it's for me, it's always been a wonderful experience. And I'm looking forward to, doing some tea ceremonies with you as well to really heighten that, because I'm sure there's a lot that I don't know. The few experiences I've had with, intentional tea ceremonies are really beautiful. So for people who don't really have any kind of experience, and some of this, may sound a little esoteric or not really available, like for somebody who just wants to practice presence with tea, I highly recommend, if you can, like be present with her to do a tea ceremony. That's the best way to do it. But for those who can't, what would you suggest? Just, choosing a tea, being with a tea. Is there anything that you could recommend for the listeners that they might want to try just to develop that relationship?
Yeah. So I believe that we can make anything a ceremony with intention and creating a ritual. So with any meditation practice or practice of presence, like they say, the main meditation is like showing up to meditate. So the first step would be, selecting a tea that you would like. At minimum, hopefully it's organic, but selecting a tea that you would like to sit with. Selecting a space, maybe that's your front porch. Maybe if you have a meditation space that you go to, like somewhere where you're going to choose to just be with that tea, brewing it, and then just sitting with it, just taking your time and enjoying it, and not just enjoying the flavors, but feeling the warmth of the cup in your hand, smelling the aroma, listening. Are there birds in the background? Is your mind going off in a different direction? Are you feeling pain in your shoulder? Like, can you just hold this cup of tea and be with it until it's gone? And then maybe fill it up again and be with that. And then maybe suddenly you notice something different. And so I do recommend maybe sitting with anywhere up to 3 cups. 1 cup is fine if that's all you got, but allowing yourself to slow down and just be with the tea and just notice what else comes up in that simple yet powerful ritual of sitting, taking the time, and being with the plant medicine and being with yourself and being with the moment.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. It's such a simple thing to do, but if somebody wasn't invited to do that, maybe they wouldn't think to do that. And as you're describing that, it reminds me when I took Qigong and Tai Chi classes and courses, there's things called tiger walking or like push hands. I'm just thinking of all the different practices where they were just so intentional and so slowed down that we were, what you're describing here is like just being with it, and it doesn't really matter what that practice is. This is what we're talking about, the presence of just being with. In this case, it's, a plant medicine, which it's a plant medicine. I believe, my belief is what you mean, is that because it's healing. It's something that can lend its own essence to us to enhance our well-being. And my understanding of the way plant medicines work and the way spirit works and the elementals work is with the presence that we invite them in, because it's like anything else. If you're talking and I'm like, I'm over here and over there and I'm not listening, I'm not paying attention, I'm not present, then I'm missing a lot. And it's the same with whether we're sitting with a cup of tea or 3 cups of tea, or doing a martial art or drawing a picture or singing, whatever it is. The power of presence, it really is. I will use that word, the power of presence, because it really is a very powerful energy, doing anything with presence, whether you're creating something or destroying something. I mean, the power of presence is really what's going to escalate whichever direction you go in. So we don't want to destroy anything, though. I'm just going with the yin and the yang again. We want to create.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Power of intention too, right? Like,
absolutely.
We talked about before, you could move your body through all the yoga postures. You do all the yoga postures and maybe you do them fast. And when you lay down for Shavasana, does your mind just like, has it been 10 minutes yet? Is it time to go on to the next thing? I did my yoga. Or are you going to move through the asanas as you connect to your breath? And then when you're in Shavasana, you're just going to rest and be, and maybe have an insight, maybe have an idea come through, maybe something lights up, or maybe you just rest. And so, the intention that we have with what we're doing has a big effect on what we get out of it.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, because I just feel like we're talking about intention, but we're really not putting words to it. And intention really is, we hear that a lot, but intention really is so important. And intentions can be malleable, as we intend to sit here and be present in whatever we're doing, and thoughts usually do come in and they drift by and they float and they stick and they go. I think it's really important, that I've learned anyway, when I set my intentions, is to be open to that malleability of not being so fixed, and being a Scorpio with a ascending Leo and a Leo sun. I'm always right. I got it down. I'm in control. I am best served by being more malleable and allowing those intentions to, kind of like Play-Doh, move around a little bit. That's what serves me. And that's part of presence, also knowing myself in that way, that my intentions sometimes are, it's okay for me to drift a little and be open to what's coming next. Yeah. Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say on that topic, like, because maybe there are people listening who are like, how do I set an intention? Or, and it makes me think about when I first started practicing yoga, and, the teacher would say, bring your hands into prayer and set an intention for your practice. And I would get nervous because I'm like, what am I supposed to be practicing for, or what, And so in a way, I felt called to kind of share like what setting an intention can be, and maybe it's like it's the reason behind what you're doing, but sometimes it can also be when you're asking for support or you're asking for help, as that being your intention. If you're drinking a chamomile tea, say, may I allow my mind to let go of thoughts? May I, so sometimes I think our intention can be our reason behind doing something. And it can also be an opportunity to ask for what we need.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. That's a really good point, because the intention doesn't have to necessarily be the outcome or the manifestation either. I really don't believe that it has to be. And I think being present and setting intentions, not having that expectation, I think is really important, because if we are so focused on what the outcome is going to be, and like, I'm going to manifest this and this doesn't happen, it's okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay. So, for me, like, the intention is very important. So my intention might be just to have the best possible experience that I could have. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to reach 110% today. It's going to be just be happy, healthy, and whole and healed today. That's my intention. And, it's a little bit broader, but it's also leaves that malleability in that room to be creative within that space, which I believe is important also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So another aspect which we were talking about, and you've alluded to also, is the listening, which I think is really key. Whether it's being in meditation or yoga. And I don't mean just necessarily listening with our ears, but listening to our bodies, listening to what energies, what messages are coming in, from God, Goddess, whatever your belief system is, but being open to those messages and listening with your heart, as well as your ears, as well as your skin, as well as your whole being, your eyes, your senses. So what's your experience? What do you want to share about that?
Yeah, the first thing that's coming to mind is there's this Zen saying in Zen that says to allow for space first living, rather than filling the arena of the Tao. So we could say the Tao is maybe those messages, or that truth, or that presence. We could use words to even try to explain that. But if we're always filling the space with thoughts, with plans, with ideas, and we're not creating space to just listen and be open to receive, then we kind of block ourselves from hearing those messages, hearing those other directions that we could take, allowing other opportunities to come in, because there's no space. And so it really makes me think of inviting presence into your life by inviting space into your life. And we've been so conditioned to fill the space, to fill up all of our time from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, or we're not productive, or we move into a new house and immediately we're like, well, what are we going to put in that corner? What are we going to put on that blank wall? And it needs to be like, we're just conditioned to like fill the spaces. And so I think something that's been really valuable to me has been learning how to actually listen And as you said, it's not listening with the ears necessarily, but like listening to our bodies, listening to spirit, listening to our own inner wisdom by creating space for that new wisdom, opportunities, insights to come in.
Yeah. That's so important. Yes. Yeah. I mean, how often is there not space? And I grew up very introverted and my words weren't heard. I always felt like just be there, be seen, don't say anything. And once I found my voice and I felt more empowered and all, I speak more now than I ever did, but it's still a trigger in me that, hey, if somebody doesn't want to listen to me, I'm not saying anything, because, it gets back to like feelings of being unworthy and all, because really, and I learned not to take it so personally, because in our society, most of the time, there's very, very little space. Before I'm even done speaking, the other person is usually interjecting, interrupting, because that's what we're talking about. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but that is not presence, because presence is not having a thought in your head already that I have to get out before you're even done saying anything. Presence is being in the moment with the other person and absorbing what they're giving to you, and then taking it in and having that space to reflect on it a little bit. Oh my God, somebody's reflecting on what I said, and there's space there. There's dead air. But how many times are you in a situation where people get uncomfortable when there's dead air? There's space. Nobody's saying something, right?
Yeah. Even myself, even, someone like myself who practices presence a lot. There are times when I'm not present and space comes and suddenly I'm just saying something to say something. Like we are conditioned to fill the space because it can feel uncomfortable for there to be space, especially when we don't actively practice that. So kind of tying it back to the question of how do we listen? How do we really deeply listen? We got to create the space to, set the doing aside, come into the being, and and have space for that stuff to come in, for us to be able to receive it.
Yeah, that's so true, and it's such a great practice. And I do reflect back on the experiences that the guys share with me. We do a lot of the practices that we're talking about here that I find would be very helpful. I know that they've been helpful for me. So I'll share like Qigong or Tai Chi or meditation or yoga or just presence. And I understand, because I'm still evolving and learning myself after many, many, many years of these practices, that it's not always easy. A lot of times it's not easy. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. So, when I hear the guys saying like, I can't meditate for 5 minutes, I'm like, you know what? Then meditate for 2 minutes. Wow, it's only 2 minutes. Well, you know what? 2 minutes of presence is better than 5 minutes of non-presence. It doesn't really matter. I think we do that a lot in society. Also, we quantify things. Like how much is this? How much is this worth even? Rather than just being. And that's a big thing that we've worked on also. Being, doing, having, which the mindset primarily in our society is have, do, be. I want to have this. So I'm doing that. And I'll be whoever I need to be to have this, rather than why not? Let's be, let me be, I get to be the beautiful person, the beautiful soul, the caring, compassionate, generous person that I want to be. And in doing that, that supports my being. And ultimately I will have everything that I want to have. I mean, that's the real paradigm that we could sit over a nice cup of tea and be present with, right?
Mm-hmm.
But why is it so hard?
Yeah, part of the journey.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think it's by design that things are set up to be so chaotic that it's not necessarily supported for us to be these calm, wonderful, meditative beings, because then we would get a lot of things done. We would feel healthier. We wouldn't need necessarily as much big pharma. We wouldn't need all these medications that are, I mean, I say it cracks me up, but it's really not funny. The commercials for these medications, and I mean, I don't even have TV now, but watching them over the years, when you listen to them and the side effects, and they're showing beautiful people having a wonderful time, but it may cause brain hemorrhages, anal bleeding, and hysteria. I mean, but consult your doctor. It's free samples are on the way. I mean, they make it like it's like, you know, you want this, and you know, the media is a whole nother like non-presence for me that just I feel like does not really feed the soul. So I recommend a lot of times to the guys also turn it off, man. Turn off the news, turn off the TV, and just turn off your brain, you know?
We'll be right back after this. Do you sometimes feel down, lost, or lonely? Are your finances feeling sluggish? Can your relationships use a healthy tune-up? Don't fear, bro. Help is here. Experience the benefits of connecting with other men who are going through similar challenges. Be supported in our safe, sacred, and inspiring monthly telecircle with the Brotherhood of the Illuminated Warriors. Connect with Waska for one-on-one mentoring with the first session completely free. What have you got to lose? Check out illuminatedwarrior.com or send an email to waska@illuminatedwarrior.com. You're invited to step up your game and join us. You'll be glad you did.
Well, there's a saying, I don't know if it's Taoist or Buddhist or Zen or whatever it is, but you know, maybe you're not seeing what you want in the branches because what you are really looking for can only clearly be seen in the roots. You know, and that's and the work actually we're coming full circle with the Illuminated Warrior group. We're starting back. We did the whole work. We went through all the chakras because you cannot elevate if you don't have a grounded, safe, secure foundation. So we're starting with the Muladhara. We're starting back with the root chakra. And we've done this before. We've done this a number of times over the years. But, and if, why? Without that stable foundation, without those roots, you know, the tree falls over. The human falls over, the house crumbles. So it's so important to start with those strong roots that go out. You know, it's like energy ley lines, and we could connect energetically to other sacred sites. We could connect to each other, and that's where that presence comes in. And I'm not speaking esoterically because I've experienced this over the years, being in beautiful meditative group settings that we have a focused intention, you know, to elevate our vibration, and that's our intention. So we sit mindfully and we meditate on joining together through, you know, the invisible energies beneath the surface of the earth, of Mother Earth, who supports all of us, who doesn't need us, by the way. She tolerates us, you know, but we can connect to people all around the universe through that energy, you know, and these, you know, sometimes are thought of as esoteric, and maybe they are, but when you practice them, you realize they're very much possible, and we can elevate ourselves. We can elevate each other. And that to me is the real work that needs to be done. And that's why I think presence and listening and all these things we're talking about really go hand in hand to be able to lift each other up, because there's way too much of squashing down and pointing fingers and not supporting one another. So being involved with these practices and sitting together with whoever your brother and sister is and having a cup of tea intentionally and speaking and listening from the ears and from the heart and joining together, that to me, that's what it's all about. You know, we elevate ourselves up that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and that brings me into like when we can connect to our own inner presence, the ability that we have from that space of presence to connect to others, to connect to nature. It's so beautiful. It's so rich. And yeah, what a joy to connect with yourself, but also to be able to connect to others through that space of presence.
I love that you brought up nature, because nature, just like animals, I heard your four-legged barking before, they have very different intentions and presence than the two-leggeds do. They don't perseverate over nonsense. You know, they're hungry, or they're procreating, or they're just about joy. You know, and that could be a whole debate whether who's more sentient or who's more grounded, who's more present. But I love animals and I love nature. So, you know, I joke around. I mean, I work with people, so of course I do love people. I joke around like I don't even like people, you know, which of course I do. I don't always love the bad behaviors of people. But just like all of the Eastern philosophies and the martial arts and the postures and positions, they're all fashioned after animals, or like Zhanzheng Qigong, it's a standing tree, or you know all the different martial arts moves, repulse monkey. It's all back from nature, because that's really the root of presence and the root of being, I think, oneness, you know. So we could learn a lot from animals about presence. We could learn a lot from nature. You know, my indigenous friends call like the tree people, the one-legged praying people. You know, they are sentient, or the grandfathers that go into an inipi purification ceremony. They're sentient. You know, people say, oh, it's a stone. Well, it's a stone, but it's also a grandfather. It has wisdom. It's been alive before your father and your grandfather and his father was here. So it's seen, it's heard, it's felt, it's witnessed incredible trials and tribulations, knowledge, wisdom. I mean, so again, these things sometimes sound a little wacky to people, you know, like I'm gonna be with a stone or a rock or hug a tree. Well, try it. I say try it. I mean, you know, don't knock it till you've tried it, right?
Try it. Exactly. Because if we're talking about presence being a practice, any practice, if you practice basketball every day, you're going to evolve in that practice. And so maybe your practice of presence starts out with the sticky note over your bed. And then, you know, you do that for a while. That feels good. It's ingrained, just like brushing your teeth in the morning is. Was that lightning?
That was the presence of the Wakians, the thunder beings, affirming what you just said. Yes.
Thank you.
That's presence. They said, yeah, Aurora, you go, girl.
Yeah. So that practice is going to evolve. And once you kind of get like in the groove of a practice, then it becomes trying to be present while you're eating your meals, or, you know. And so I really liked what you said about try it. You know, it might sound crazy that if you're feeling anxious, you can go put yourself under a waterfall and wash away that anxiety. But why not try it? Why not try these different ways of, you know, ancient wisdom through nature and through these teachings that were so blessed to have been passed down by other humans who were experiencing what it is to be human and figuring these things out and passing down this knowledge and wisdom and practices out of love and kindness. And you know, why not try it?
Yeah. Well, I'll say some of my best experiences since I've woken up, because I was not awake for a long period of time in my previous lives, actually this life. But I love playing with presence because, you know, I've lived in New York most of my life, and being on like the Long Island Railroad is a trip in itself, because people are anything but present on the Long Island Railroad going from Long Island to Manhattan. And I would just have fun with it. I would just be like really present with people, and just sometimes it would really freak them out, you know, because they're not used to that. They're either, you know, on their phone or on their Kindle or whatever. You know, I'd have a book and people would be like, what's that? You know, because I love books, you know, I don't really like, you know, reading from the electronics necessarily. But the point being is, we could be present anywhere and have fun with it. You know, it doesn't have to be, like you were saying, this strict fold your legs and, you know, be in this meditative posture. Being present could be anywhere, anytime, and just really enjoying the presence of being there, wherever there is and whoever you're with. And it's amazing that others will respond very differently when you're present with them. People appreciate it. And sometimes they don't even know what's going on, because most of the time we're in, that fight or flight mode of, got to go, got to do this, got to, but when you're totally present and calm and in that focused state of like, hey, I'm here for you, bro. What do you need? Hey, sister, I'm listening to you. It's a gift. It really is a gift to share that presence of being with somebody else. So I, invite anybody listening, if you don't have a regular practice, whatever that practice may be, and it could be as simple as whoever's in your house or whoever you see next, set your intention to be present with them for whatever, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or until, your little social experiment here is over, and see what the difference is in your interactions as to how they were before. To just no ulterior motives, be present to whoever you see next, listen and be open to whatever that person needs from you, and be in service, which is another, I believe, huge part of being present, is being in service. Would you say?
Yes. It makes me think about, and I'm sure we've all maybe experienced it a time or two. Have you ever been around someone, maybe you don't even know them, but just being in their presence, you feel, kind of feel like you can relax a little bit more. And that's the gift. That's their practice and gift of presence coming out onto others. And so when we cultivate presence within ourselves, it does help our partners, our friends, the people around us. It does help. It can be felt. It's a vibration, and it's what I believe is our natural state. So we recognize it, even if we're not familiar with it, or we haven't experienced a lot of it in this life. Somewhere in this soul, we're familiar with it. We know what it is, and it allows us to. So practicing presence for ourselves isn't just for ourselves. It's for those around us too.
Yeah, very true. And I'll go back to like the four-leg. It's just observing. If you have a cat or a dog or even a bird, whatever it is, or fish, just observing your pets, how present they are. I love doing that. Like there's a dog park where I live, and I'm not really embarrassed to say it. I know like almost all the dogs' names, but I don't know all the people's names.
Yeah, and it's I have a dog, and when I'm walking him, a lot of times people say hi to him and they don't say anything to me. And maybe that is because we can sense their presence, or we feel safer, or we feel comforted. I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit scarier to face that presence with other human beings, but I have experienced that with owning a dog, that sometimes people say hi to the dog and not to me. And maybe it's that unconditional love and presence, that vibration that we feel drawn to.
Yeah. And maybe even preconceived notions or judgments or expectations we have, because we all do it. I mean, the Dalai Lama has even said, that he's susceptible to judgments. As soon as we see somebody else, we're assessing them, we're making a judgment. I mean, it's just a human thing that we do. And if we go into a situation where we're doing our best not to do that, not to have those preconceived notions, and not judging, and just being open and letting things flow naturally, it's almost like a remembering or reteaching ourselves, because I really fully believe the way the school system set up and the churches and temples and just the whole education system in this country, and not just this country, by the time we're 7 or 8 years old, we've really had established patterns from our families, from our peers, from our churches and temples, and from society, that a lot of times that sacred little boy and girl spirit has been squashed, and we don't know how to be present, whereas we were naturally present prior to that. If you watch kids, they don't care if you're laughing at them or with them, or they don't care. They're playing, they're in their blissful state. All the things that you mentioned in the beginning, with the openness, the security, the bliss, that's what kids do. That's their natural state. That was all of our natural states. And so now we do all these practices to get back to that natural state of being childlike, right? And even hear like the child within, and because the child within has experienced trauma, because we all have. So that's what these practices are really all about, is getting back to that childlike, open, joyful, blissful way of being.
Yeah. Being present with what is, and knowing that whatever is human and probably is for others too. So being okay and having compassion for yourself in whatever's coming up in the present moment.
Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful. So what have we not touched upon that you might want to leave our listeners with, or whatever words, pearls of wisdom that you would like to impart on the audience?
Well, one thing that I wanted to share when we talk about practicing presence and all the different practices that there are, I think it's important to acknowledge that our breath, something that we do
Great.
in the moment we're born, and it's just there. We're not necessarily always conscious of it, is one of our, I believe, to be strongest tools if we just choose to use it. And so, if someone feels like there's no time to meditate or there's no practice that's really speaking to you, like using the practice of the deep breath, taking one deep breath, that's practicing presence, being aware of that breath, taking a deep breath. I mean, we could even do it right now.
Let's do it. Really?
We could just close our eyes and just take a deep inhale through the nose, filling up on fresh air and prana. And then parting the lips and letting the breath fall out of the mouth.
Yeah.
That's presence. That's a practice. So it can be simple.
As simple as breathing.
As simple as breathing.
Something we all do. Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because breath work is such an integral part of meditation, of yoga, of living, and of presence. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And there's a lot of different breath work practices, but even just what you're saying here, just taking that deep breath. I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say when there's conflict or somebody's upset, oh, take a breath, take a deep breath. And it's not cliche. It really does work. We're getting that oxygen in, we're stopping the world for a second and just letting that tension out, rather than clutching and tightening our chests and stopping the breath. So yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. There's so many beautiful things that come with breath work. Just another simple one, because there are a lot of them that I practice with the guys a lot. You probably know the 4-7-8 breath. You breathe in on the count of 4, hold it for 7, and then exhale with 8, which is I think it's just great. Even physiologically, it's proven it just slows the heart rate down and it just brings everything down. And that's just one. Just you could do the porpoise breath, just blowing it out. I mean, there's so many alternate nostril breathing and all. So that's something that we invite the listeners to check out also, some breath work. So It's been so wonderful, my friend. So
thank you for inviting me into presence.
Yes, thank you for being present. So let the listeners know where they can connect with you.
So you can connect with me through my website, which is www.auroraayurveda.com, or my Instagram, which I just changed my name. So let's see if I can remember it. It's Aurora_living medicine.
Beautiful. Well, I will make sure that all of that accurate information is in the show notes. So when people see the show, they will be able to connect with you. I highly recommend checking out Aurora's offerings, whether you're able to physically be in her presence, her beautiful, wonderful, in the moment presence, or connecting virtually. So thank you again, my friend. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Until next time, let's us continue to illuminate our paths with love and kindness.
Visit IlluminatedWarrior.com if you'd like to go deeper and find out more about what's available within the Illuminated Warrior Men's Transformational Community. Tune in next time for more candid conversations for men and women about men on the Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show every Thursday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. Until next time, illuminate your path with loving kindness.